ad avviare la registrazione, che come al solito poi troverete disponibile su YouTube, sul nostro YouTube di ICF. E se sei pronto io comincio a presentarti. È un piacere,
Absolutely.
è un piacere introdurvi Anne Fogolin, che si pronuncia così perché l'origine di suo marito è italiana, per cui è un cognome italiano. Ehm, è una coach, una mentor, una supervisor, relatrice di molti webinar, ha una grandissima esperienza nell'ambito del coaching, per cui ha tante cose da raccontarci. In particolare, questa sera andremo a focalizzarci sulle competenze 3 e 8, che sono un po' quelli che vengono definiti i fermalibri di una conversazione di coaching, e cercheremo insieme come, insomma, intrecciarli, di farli funzionare insieme. Ehm, Questo webinar rilascerà due credit core competencies e ovviamente, come al solito, riceverete l'attestazione al vostro indirizzo mail e poi cioè la notifica, e poi avrete nella vostra pagina personale. Se sei pronta, io ti lascio la parola e come avevo già accennato, se avete bisogno dell'interpretazione, cliccate sul globo e seguite in lingua italiana la traduzione di Alessandra e Elena che sono connesse. Buon lavoro, buon proseguimento, buon ascolto.
Thank you so much, Giorgio, for the invitation, and buonasera a tutti. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. And yes, my husband his family is from the Udine area of Italy. I've not had the pleasure of visiting, but I hope to get there at some point in my lifetime. Welcome, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be here with you. And Alessandra, Elena, if I'm speaking too quickly, please tell me to slow down. I do become quite passionate with this information, and so the excitement might just cause for an accelerated speech. This evening, we're looking at two competencies which truly are the bookends of a coaching conversation. And what I'd like to invite you to experience today are the different levels at the ACC, PCC, and MCC level as to how this can be demonstrated. I invite you to participate fully, to be on camera, to interact. I really do appreciate that versus my just speaking at you. That's not how I really like to focus as much as possible. So the object today is for you to understand the differences at the three different levels, why it's so important for you to establish a really solid agreement, equally how important it is in closing a conversation. We're going to use a recording that one of my MCC mentoring clients submitted for her credential, and it is to send you into breakout rooms later on to discuss what it is that you are learning, perhaps what new insights you're gaining, what questions you might have, and to bring you back into the large group and have all of that shared, both insights and any questions that you might have. Anything that you need answered now or questions that you might have before we begin? I'm fascinated by how this interpretation is all taking place at the same time. So certainly I am more than happy to adjust anything that it is that you feel that you need. So please do let me know. Let me just get the screens up here and let's share and get started. Can you see my screen, everyone? Is that showing up?
Yes.
Fantastic, good, thank you. And so let me just make sure that I can see all of you at the same time. And we will make this, excuse me, we'll just do this so we can make this bigger and put this into a slideshow. There we go. All right. So we are moving into what it is that's required. The first competency that we're talking about is establish and maintains agreement. Within this particular state of a coaching conversation, my experience has been that many people rush through this, and my invitation for you to really understand today is how much time can actually be taken in order to demonstrate a solid agreement. The ICF says you can take up to half of your session in order to establish a solid agreement. Most of the mentoring I do, I ask clients to look for a recording between 30 and 40, 45 minutes. And that's often because the longer a recording goes, longer a session goes, the greater the likelihood that the conversation meanders. And so if we can keep this as concise as possible with that time limit, then the coach has an opportunity to demonstrate these skills well. What I'm really hoping that you understand also is that there are several other competencies that are being demonstrated while you set the agreement, which you will notice in the recording today. Within this particular competency, the definition is that we are partnering with the client and the stakeholders. In this particular case, because we're working with a one-on-one, it's the coach and the client partnering with the client to really demonstrate what is it that the client wants from the session. So this particular competency has 11 different standards or abilities that are listed underneath it. So these first three, and then the next few, are really part of if it's a third party, if I'm working within an organization. But what's really most important here are what you will understand from partnering with a client to confirm what it is that they want to talk about, what they want to walk away with, and how is that going to be measured. Those are the three main pieces. And what's really important for us to pay attention to is at an ACC level. So I do a lot of mentoring, I do a lot of assessing, I train other assessors, I'm a coach supervisor, and I've also been part of all three of these different rating scales, meaning I was part of the group that put the PCC markers together, and I'm also part of the group that has helped to form the ACC and MCC bars. And so I have an understanding of what it is that's really required. When I listen from an assessing perspective, this is what I use for an ACC. So did the coach actually reach an agreement with the client? And it can be as simple as, what is it that you'd like to focus on today? And what is it that the client wants as an outcome? Is there a measure of some sort? How is it that the client is going to know? And when we are setting the agreement at an ACC level, it is often very what-centric. So it's, it feels very mechanical, very formulaic, because people are still learning. What is it that the client wants to talk about? What do they want? How are you going to know? When we get into the PCC, the markers here are more detailed, and this is where the who component comes into play. And I just want to stop to be sure that we understand, what is your understanding of what versus who in a coaching conversation? I don't know how this is going to work, Alessandra, so I'd love, I'm posing the question to the group, and I'd love to hear from the group. The understanding, what constitutes a what conversation versus a who conversation.
Exploring the emotions are part of the who of the being
Yes.
of a person.
Yeah. Yes. What else?
Se posso, il chi è più in profondità, quindi andiamo ad esplorare veramente con il cliente che cosa davvero vuole, no? Quindi cosa c'è dietro all'outcome e all'obiettivo che lui dichiara, no? Perché lui dichiara un obiettivo, ma con il chi va in profondità veramente chi sei e chi vuoi essere soprattutto. Quindi scendi più in profondità con il cliente a modo di esplorare meglio cosa davvero desidera.
That was lovely. Maria Teresa, is that right?
Sì, esatto.
Beautiful. And so what you've beautifully described, if I can use a metaphor of an iceberg, the very top part of an iceberg is what we can see. And if we use that in coaching, that's often the what, it's the situation. And we are paying attention to things like the language that the client has used, the tone, the pacing, the cadence. But what was beautifully just described a moment ago, that's the what. The who is underneath the waterline. Those are the beliefs, those are the values, those are the assumptions, those are the biases that a client may have. And that's where the transformational work happens. The part on top is very transactional, which is often an ACC conversation. The PCC brings pieces of what's underneath the waterline, so all of those elements I just described, into the conversation. Lovely. And that's what translates into the next, which is the MCC. So the MCC, sorry, these slides are a little bit different. Hold on one second. I want to be sure that I'm where I want to be with you. No. Let me share where I am. PCC, MCC, here we go. So the MCC is all under the waterline. It is all who based. So the progression is ACC is above the waterline, transactional. PCC is a combination of the what and the who, so bringing both of those elements in. And the MCC is all waterline, under the waterline. The situation is not something that we are most concerned with. It's the impact of the situation. What is it that this individual is challenged by? What is the experience? How are they looking at it? What is it that somehow is impacting them? How is it influencing how they are demonstrating what's going on in their lives? And as you will notice, the word partners comes up more and more as we progress. So from an ACC perspective, we expect that the individual, that the coach will invite, but there's still often at an ACC level where the coach is wanting to add value. And they feel that adding value is where they tell or they share. As you progress to PCC and MCC, the partnership component becomes more and more critical. And at an MCC level, for sure, what you want to be hearing is partnership. Partnering to understand and explore what's making this topic important, what will be different as this individual goes through whatever they're experiencing, to be sure that, excuse me, they receive what it is that they're looking for by the end of the call. So there are different levels of questions that can be asked. When we are at an ACC, it's often, what would you like to focus on? The client gets to answer. Then we hear, what would you like by the end of our call today? And then hopefully we get an outcome, a measure. How will you know? So those are typically what you'll hear. At a PCC level, you'll hear the what would you like to focus on with some level of exploration before the outcome question, and hopefully again the measure. And I'm really reinforcing this piece because it is critical to have. It's the first part of our bookend. This is critical to have by the time you complete. At the MCC level, and you're going to hear this now in the recording, is that the coach takes a substantial amount of time to allow the client to share not just what the situation is, but the coach is very curious about what is the client experiencing because of the situation. So it's not necessarily that they're looking to solve a problem of any sort, it's the impact of what's going on. So before I actually move into the recording, any thoughts or questions that are coming up for the group that we need to address before we move on? It's all making sense? All right, so I am going to play the agreement portion of, as I said, a recording of one of my MCC mentoring clients that she submitted for her credential and thankfully was successful in gaining her MCC. And really what I'd like you to pay attention to is the time that's taken in order to flush out what the client really wants. But what I'm also going to invite you to do is pay attention to the other competencies that are being demonstrated while the agreement is being set. One of the things that's most important when training newer coaches is that I often hear, well, I have to get the agreement so I can start coaching. And what I would offer you is the second you come on the Zoom screen or the second you pick up the telephone, you're coaching. So what are the other competencies that the coach is demonstrating as she sets the agreement? So I want to be sure that I can maximize this sound for you. So let me make sure that I have that. And okay, so hold on one second. I need to do this in a different way and see if I can share my sound. All right, so Alessandra, I'm going to start the recording if you're ready to go. And okay, fantastic. And what I think I can do, no, let's just try this. Let me know if you can hear this, please, so that it is clear for you.
Hey, Nancy, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I was looking forward to connecting with you.
Good, excellent. Well, once again, thank you for agreeing to this recording for my training purposes. Appreciate
No
it.
problem. No problem.
All righty. So you said you were looking forward to this. So sounds like you're ready to go. Am I here?
I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Hey, let's go then. What are we going to talk about today?
Okay, so an interesting thing came up, which was kind of made me sort of sit back and really stop and think. You know, and I don't know why this is sitting in my head, but so I don't any longer really have a lot of conversations with our CEO. He's traveling the world, and it's this guy Brian, who's our president, myself, and then we have our VPs, right? You've met one of our VPs, Joe. So we have our VPs responsible for the areas. So the CEO's, I mean, he's doing stuff. He's, you know, but it's not that connection day to day that I have anymore. So there's stuff that's just sort of up to us. Like he sort of handed over the reins and said, go. In any event, we've made some tough people decisions recently, especially on the HR team. Not so tough for me, but you know, I wanted to handle them properly. And so he was asking me, how are you doing? And I was explaining I'm using one head count, and I'm going to get this job instead, hire this talent instead. And, you know, I was telling him sort of the chess game of the HR function for the organization. And his response to me was, what do you need? And I said, well, you know, like I said, this is what I'm going to be prioritizing. And he said, it's not what I asked you. What I asked you is, what do you need? And I was sort of like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, Nancy, we're going to be $1 billion organization soon. And he said, now when I joined, I was hired to head up human resources. It was $250 million business. So he says, we're going to be $1 billion organization soon. And I need you. So, so what do you need to set up for success for the future? So I added a couple of pieces. I need, you know, another resource in this area and another resource in that area. He said, do it, done. Let's do it. And anyway, my topic that I wanted to talk about today was that conversation sat heavy with me. I don't know why. And I think, and that's what I want to kind of uncover. I even said to my husband when I went home that night or the next day, I thought about it overnight, and I was like, I'm like heading up HR and administration for $1 billion company. And potentially like, you know, that's not an aggressive target. And my husband goes, I know, like that's awesome. And I'm like, it's a big deal. And I mean, just little things like I'm looking at, I don't know, I'm talking to a vendor about our 401k plan, and I'm looking at, you know, what we're putting in place. And, you know, it's like a $20 million plan. And I'm making decisions about, so I kind of sit back and I think, like, I guess I'm good, but maybe it's a confidence thing. I don't know. And I'm like, you know, do I have the knowledge? Am I the right person? That's not the right question. It's just sitting heavy with me.
All right. So, you know, you've mentioned that the CEO has pulled back, really relying on you and Brian, the president, really for big day-to-day decisions.
Yeah, everything.
He says, what do you need? And you're like a little like caught off guard actually with that question. Not that you've never heard that question before, as we've discussed, but then you walk away being heavy. What about the conversation made it feel heavy with you?
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to figure that out, right? Is it, like, this guy started from nothing. This is a company he built from a $20,000 loan from his father-in-law. And, you know, you know, I always take every job I have and every responsibility very seriously. But I also do when it's someone's blood, sweat, and tears, right? That I'm now responsible for. Right? Like that's an honor. He's entrusting me to build and to grow and to support and to do a good job. Right? And so I take that very seriously.
Very much so. Sounds like he's trusting you.
Yeah.
And has confidence in you. You take it seriously, but then you're like, I wonder if I got some confidence stuff going on. What was in that comment?
Yeah, well, I don't know, like, I don't know what is making me pause. Not pause like, I don't wanna do this anymore. But like, you know, Nancy of 5 years ago, I wouldn't be spending time thinking about the gravity of my decisions or the weight of my decisions. I would be focused on, I'll figure it out, I'll find a way, right? Like, but the stakes are bigger now. I think that's what it is.
All right. So, sounds like you're saying with the stakes being bigger, that might be impacting this heaviness, confidence?
I think so. I think so. And I think, you know what I think, when I really think about it, I look back to, I mean, it's not a, good, well, it's not a bad comparison, but when I look back when I worked for Tyco, right, I remember going to the head office in Tyco in Princeton, it was corporate America, right? Big bar phone in the front, right? You walk in and you go, like, it's like, and the CHRO at the time was this guy by the name of Larry. And he just had a presence. He didn't say a lot, he had a presence. I don't know what Larry did, no idea. He was always with George Oliver, our CEO. I have no idea what his day looked like. But I think that, like, he just had in my view, he had the presence, right? He wasn't, like, you were like, oh yeah, there comes the CHRO. There comes the, and like I'm different. That was like 4 times the size, but I guess I'm sort of looking like I'm that person now. And that is not me. Right? So
wow. Yeah. So go ahead.
Like, is that okay? Like, I think that's the question I have, I guess, is that's the ideal that I've had in my head. And, I'm nothing like him.
Huh. So
I say hi to everybody when I walk in, right? I'm much more of a doer. I'm side by side with people. Which is more my style. It's a bit of a problem. I need to delegate it, jazz, but that's okay. But I just, yeah, there's parts of that I guess I'm okay with, but it's this, I guess it's the ideal that I have in my head of what that role, that position at that level looked like.
So as you've been kind of unpacking thoughts, heaviness, confidence, this ideal person in your role, where do you think we need to go with this to help you figure out what's really going on with you?
I mean, I think what I would tell, if someone else were asking, if someone else was faced with this and I wasn't coaching them, I would tell them that I would suggest to them that they need to do write down what, their leadership philosophy is for that role in that time in their life. So who do they want to be? What do they want to stand for? Right? And it could be the same as it was 10 years ago, but it's reframing that at this point in their life. And so maybe that's what I need to do is.
So if we focus on who you want to be in this larger role that sounds like is coming quickly to you.
Yeah.
Maybe is here already.
Yeah.
Might be a better way to say it. As if that's what like we're focusing in on, and we look at who you want to be. What, like at the end, would you like to kind of have available to you to move forward?
I think going through that exercise gives you sort of the clarity of sort of your operating model every day, right? It's just, it's not that it's not there, it's that you're operating that way anyway, but you may emphasize some things more that you want to intentionally tweak. Or so I think I have to include in that how I want to work. Because that will, what I have available to me is, my team, of course. And it will include how I want to work, how I want to interact with them, how I want to build them, how I want to help them grow. So it's not just I'm not thinking of this sort of reframing as being, about me internally, right? It's sort of about the approach.
Okay. So sounds like the focus is more on, in this bigger role, how you're going to approach others.
Yeah.
And maybe walk away with some clarity on your operating model. Is that?
Yeah.
Thinking?
I like, yes, and that crystallizes it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when we come to the end of our whatever 45, 50 minutes, whatever it ends up being, when we come to that end, like how will you know you have clarity on your operating model?
Test it.
Okay. So at the end of our session, you got some concepts and ideas that you can walk away with, then you give it a try, and maybe more specifics around it as you go, but at least kind of have, if you feel you have something you could give a try, maybe, is that how you'll know if you had something to walk away with today? Or is that too big? What?
Well, I think that I need to,
And I'm going to pause it there. Excuse me. What I'd really love to hear from the group, what did you notice? What were some of the competencies that the coach demonstrated quite well? I'm stacking my questions. Don't do that.
Hi, this is Franco. So I personally was really impressed by the space that the coachee was provided. So it was amazing to see how much room it was provided to the coachee just to reflect and also to think about what was happening around. So very, very few questions at the beginning from the coach side. And then I noticed that the coach just rephrased what the coachee was saying. And by the way, just listen to what the coachee was saying again. Immediately, I think the coachee just unstuck and just changed to a new mood. Also, when the coach just tried to focus on the emotion that the situation was just creating on the coaches, so it was not focusing on what was the problem, but what was the emotion that the problem was triggering on the coachee. So it was really impressive for myself.
I really appreciate both of those points that you're bringing forward, Franco. The space, not only the space provided while the client was speaking, but notice too that there was space between when the client had finished before the client or before the coach offered her next observation or question. So thank you for that. And yes, the other piece of this is the emotion. So remember, we talked about at an MCC level, it's all about the who. So this coach is focused on everything that's underneath that waterline. What is it that the client is sharing? Because she talked about a confidence issue. She talked about who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? So she holds this position of CHRO, which is the Chief Human Resources Officer in. What she shared was a $250 million business is now going to be $1 billion business. That's a lot of responsibility. So what does that mean for this individual? So great pickup on that, Franco. Thank you.
Yeah, and the very last thing that I noticed is that when you mentioned at the beginning that maybe the real difference between ACC and MCC is the fact that the coach is no more willing to add his own value to the conversation. So I noticed that the coach sometimes was not even asking questions, was just making an exclamation like, wow, yeah. So it was just pausing without asking any question.
Yes. And that's a great demonstration of the trust and safety competency. It is the building of the rapport, the building of the relationship. It's a demonstration of, I've got you. I'm here for you. It has nothing to do about the coach. Coaching is an ego-less profession. Ego-less. It has nothing to do with who we are and what we bring. The skills we bring are what this coach is demonstrating so beautifully. Thank you, Franco.
You're right.
Who else? What did you notice?
I noticed that the coach was picking up several times the concept of heaviness that the client was mentioning. And she offered this feeling with no judgment, with no interpretation, but at the same time offering the possibility to make her own thoughts about the impact of the heaviness within her who.
Beautiful. Sorry, Giovanna. Yes. Great demonstration of presence, of curiosity on the part of the coach with no judgment. And there's also a piece of the evokes awareness competency coming into this in the quality of the questions. And as you just demonstrated also, it wasn't necessarily a question, but it was an observation. But because she raised her voice at the end of it, it was therefore an invitation for the client to respond. These are beautiful examples, everybody, of partnership. And again, at the MCC level, it's all about partnership. It is about fully exploring with the client what the client wants to work on in the spirit of partnership. Constantly checking in with the client. How is this working for them? What are they noticing as they go through that? Great point, Giovanna. Thank you. Who else? What did you notice? What stood out for you? I'm stacking questions. Don't do that. I will demonstrate what to do. I will demonstrate what not to do. Okay. So to give you an idea, excuse me, and because I do assess at this level as well, there were a couple of things in there, for example, where she was looking to make sure that there was an understanding of what this client wanted from this time together. There was no rushing of the agreement. I'm really hoping that you saw how she took time, the coach took time to flush out what exactly is it that the client is struggling with, not the first thing that came to mind, but what is it that she's really struggling with that, is the thing, but I offer the thing beneath the thing. What's really going on that this client wants to talk about? And this is really important for us to take time and understand, so that when we ask that question of what is it that the client wants by the time the session has completed, that the client has had enough time to flush out what could be happening for them. And then what she also did was asking the measure question, how will the client know? And the client then said it took a long time because the coach asked her, how would she know? And it took a long time, and the client said to test it. To be honest with you, this goes on for a little bit longer, another 3 or 4 minutes, because the coach didn't feel like she had an agreement that she was secure in understanding. And that's exactly where we stay as coaches. You stay with the client until you have an idea. That outcome, that agreement is your GPS. You want to know where it is that the client wants to go, so you can support them in getting there. And this is critical. Notice how many competencies were actually demonstrated while setting the agreement. So there was trust and safety with the support. There was presence in the curiosity. There was this deep listening because it was demonstrated through the quality of the observations and questions. There were the questions. There's the evokes awareness competency. So several competencies, when you are at this level, are being demonstrated. And that's the progression. ACC is so often focused on the mechanics of it, the what, that they miss the deeper flushing out. The PCC, you want a balance in that. The MCC, you want this next piece. Any thoughts or questions about any of that before we actually move on? Okay, so let me just check this out. In a 45-minute agreement, how long can the session be? So I'm going to reverse that. In a 45-minute session, is it Tommaso? I want to pronounce it correctly.
Yes,
In
Tommaso,
a 45,
Tommaso.
Tommaso.
My question is, if to confirm the agreement with the client, it can take 45 minutes. How long can last the entire session with this client?
So that's a great question. And honestly, the answer is it takes as long as it takes to get an agreement. If in the process of trying to understand where the client wants to go, it takes 45 minutes, that's probably your session. You're not going to have much more that's going to go on from there. What's most important is for us to understand that without an understanding of the agreement, this conversation really isn't going to go anywhere. And if you find that the conversation goes around and around in circles, it means you don't have an agreement. If you find that as the coach, you're asking more and more closed-ended questions, it's because you now as coach are doing the work, trying to understand where the client wants to go. So what's most important, this is a great question, what's most important is that we continue to partner with the client. What are you noticing as we go through this? What's coming up for you as we are exploring this? What new awareness are you gaining as we go through this conversation? How is this supporting you in getting closer to what you hoped for from our time together today? Those types of open-ended questions allow the client to take all of these ideas they have and begin to filter them, to funnel them down. How are we doing? I want to be sure that you got it. You're welcome. Did it answer your question, my friend?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Excellent. You're most welcome. Anyone else? That was a great question. Anyone else before we go to the other side of what is needed? We're good? All right. So let me make sure that I can get the technology part of this going here. Yes, I can. Mm-hmm. With the PCC and setting the agreement, what types of questions? So at a PCC level, when we're setting the agreement, some of the questions that you would hear, that I would expect to hear, would be to ask about the focus. So what is it that you'd like to focus our time together on? Or what is the topic that you'd like to focus on? Or something to start that off. Then listening to what the client offers you, it would be important to ask questions like, what's making this most important for you at this point? What is it that matters most for you about this topic? What do you need most from our time together today? Those types of questions begin to explore further, and they're getting into more of the who, understanding the possibility of the who versus just the situational, the transactional piece on top. And once there's a better understanding of that, then you would move into the facilitating client growth type of question, meaning the outcome. What would make this a powerful conversation for you today? What would be demonstration that this had been a successful conversation for us today? What is it that you would have by the time we're finished today that you don't have now? What might be a way for you to measure that we've been successful in our time together today? So those three components, meaning the focus, the outcome, and then the measure, have been asked about, but not in a mechanical or formulaic manner, which is often what we hear at ACC, because at ACC, most coaches are still worried about their skill versus being there in service of the client. And so the PCC coach has really let go of most of that, hopefully, because you've moved from 100 to 500 hours of coaching, and you really are much more confident and secure in your skills. So there's no room for that. Remember, coaching is ego-less. So there's no place for us as coach to be in there. I'm hoping that answered the question, Alessandra. And so whoever asked that, please make sure that you did get your question answered before we jump into the second part. Happy to answer whatever it is that's coming up. You're most welcome. Good, good, good. All right, everybody. So then we're going to move into, let me just find this. I had such wonderful help from the team you have in your chapter in making the slides appear as they're meant to, which was a little bit different from what I had, but it's perfect. And so I'm just trying to navigate this. So just bear with me, please, for a moment. Here we go. So let's get this back up for you. So the second part of this, or the second bookend, so we have the front bookend, which is the setting of the agreement. The second bookend is the final competency of facilitating client growth. And this particular competency, again, notice that the definition begins with the word partners with the client. And here's what is so critical. Partners with the client to transform the learning into action. It's often when I listen to a recording for assessment that I hear the other way around. So I often hear, what would you like to do? What are you going to do with that? What might be a first step? And then the coach asks, what have you learned? And what I'm offering you, everybody, is that needs to be in reverse order. If we follow this competency, we must ask about and anchor any learning that has taken place before we invite the client to use that in potential next steps. It is the partnering to transform and integrate learning. They can't integrate it if you haven't asked about it. And that's a crucial distinction in how many people actually offer this last part. So this can happen throughout the session. And in this recording, this coach does a lovely job of really anchoring learning as time goes on. But it's a 2-minute session, and I didn't want to take up the whole time for you to listen to it. So I have the last about 6 minutes that I am going to get you to listen to in how it is that she does invite the client to transform the learning into action. If we look at this competency, it is to integrate the awareness into their behavior. You can't integrate it if you haven't asked about it. So to do that in reverse order makes no sense. At the ACC level, sorry, I'm just so into this that I forgot to do what I was supposed to do, which is to put this in a slideshow so that you can see it. Oh, goodness gracious me. I'm not the technical person. How's that? Let me just get you back to where we need to be. There we are. My apologies, everybody. If you came from my technical abilities, that's not going to happen. Anyway, here we go. So at the ACC level, the bars that measure this, what are we looking for? We're looking for the coach to ask the client in translating awareness. So even at the ACC level, we're asking for the coach to demonstrate, what did you learn? What have you learned from our time together today? What new learning do you have? Partnering with the client as to specific next steps. How would you like to use that? And then partnering to close. So this really is important, partnering to close. How would you like to close our session? At the PCC level, this particular competency has 9 separate markers to it. And if you look at this, it's still about, look at this, the coach invites, partners. This is a constant. What have you learned? What new insights have you gained? What are you aware of now that you weren't before? Here's a who question. What do you know about yourself now that you didn't when we first began? What new learning do you have about yourself? How have you understood your experience of this differently than when we began? Those who type questions, inviting the client. Okay. And then we have the next piece of this. And that is how is it that the coach is going, or sorry, the client is going to use this information? So we talk about the invitation for the client to share how they're going to use that. Many at the ACC level want to do a very tangible, the client's going to do. And that's good, but not all clients want to have a tangible outcome. At the PCC level, you might have somebody who says to you, I don't know that I know what I'm going to do. I need to think about this some more. Remember that coaching is all about forward movement. As long as you have supported the client in moving from where they were when they started with you to a new place, there's been forward movement. The action is about the commitment to what they want to do or how they want to implement that. How would you like to use that new insight? And the client says, I honestly don't know. I need to percolate on this a little more. You know, too, that there's a lot of growth and continued exploration that happens between sessions, doesn't always have to happen in the session. What support do you need? Who could support you? This notion of accountability, that word accountability doesn't work for everyone. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but it is about what could support you in following through, or who might support you in following through. What do you see as a potential obstacle? What might get in the way of you completing this? There's a celebration of the client's progress, and then the partnering with the client. It's an open-ended question. At the MCC level, it's checking in with the client and the progress, and it's throughout the session. And that's what I meant when I said this coach does, in fact, check in with the client regularly throughout the session. What are you noticing? What makes that insight perhaps important to pay attention to? There's a constant partnership. I know that I am stressing the word partner. I can't stress it enough. It is a partnership. That's what coaching is. And at an MCC level, the coach is constantly partnering with the client. It's inviting the client to reflect on what they're learning about themselves, and then the environment to intentionally apply what is it that they are applying to from the awareness that they have into their next steps. So let me just stop this for a moment, and to give you some idea as to potential. So I'll just stop the share. There we go. So some potential. So that would go back to some examples of questions. So some examples of questions for you at this level would be things like, at the beginning of our session today, you said that you wanted to work on, and so I am using the example of confidence. All right. So say our client wanted to work on confidence in this session. So I might say, at the beginning, you said you wanted to work on confidence. Where are you now in understanding about your confidence? It could be going back to the beginning of our session today and what you wanted to accomplish. What progress have you made in understanding how you feel about your confidence? So it is this segue from the body. We have the agreement moving into the body, and now we're moving into this final competency. And this competency is usually, you want to give it as much time, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, to really do it justice so that there is a feeling of completion. I'm going to ask a question like, what have you learned in our session today around your confidence? What else have you become aware of during our time together today? What has shifted for you around your confidence since we began our session? What changes in your thinking or feeling have you experienced in our session relating to your confidence? And so the more examples I'm giving you, hopefully you're seeing that there's a progression from the what have you learned to a greater depth in the quality of the question that you are providing. What else have you discovered for yourself? And sorry, I've got a list here that I tried to go through to give you an example as to the progression. And then now it's the application. So that's the invitation for the learning to be shared. And now we're going to take that and integrate it into the behavior, which means to support the client in designing whatever their action will be moving forward. How will you use this learning? How will you use the learning from our session to change your feeling around your confidence? How will you use what you've discovered today? And here's a really great question. This is absolutely a high PCC to MCC. where else does this insight have impact for you in your life? And what that really allows is for the client to see what they've just experienced here and where else in their life this is a topic, an issue, something that they want to address. There's a saying, how we do anything is how we do everything. So the chances are, if you are a procrastinator at work, you are a procrastinator at home. If you are one who is challenged by making commitments at home, chances are you are challenged in making commitments at work. How you do anything is how you do everything. It is often not an isolated incident, and that's absolutely MCC, getting to who this person is. What actions do you feel that you're ready to take after our session today? What ideas do you have about next steps? So this is taking the information, the insight. Notice I'm partnering with the client in order to support them, the client autonomy in designing action. What are the actions now that make sense for you? To continue with that, the follow-up. What support would help you to follow through with the actions you've cited today? Who might support you in following through? So there's the accountability piece that is really important. What could get in the way of you following through? There's that obstacle. And the reason that that question is so important is that it invites the client to see this situation from a completely different perspective, and for them to look at that and think, oh, I hadn't thought of this. Maybe I need to rethink what I've set out for myself. So the obstacle, or what could get in the way, is a great question to ask. What resources do you have available to you? What additional support would be beneficial for you? To continue to ask so that the client feels like they don't have to do this on their own. What's the right time frame for you so that there's something realistic? What's the level of your ownership of the actions that you've mentioned? That's absolutely an MCC level question. And then following through, the progress. So this is often a statement. I might offer something like, it seems like you've made great progress in understanding more about your confidence level since we began. Or it could be since our last session. Remember too, that there's a cumulative aspect to the coaching if you have this relationship, ongoing relationship. You seem to have more peace about understanding this confidence. It's a statement, it's a celebration of the progress. There's a difference in your energy now as we are coming near the end of our session. And so at the end too, I would offer, it's a partnership to close. How would you like to, we are at the end of our session, how would you like to close? Or we're very close to the end of our session. What do you feel you'd like to say to feel complete? Or how is it that you would like to bring our time together to a close today? How do you want to complete our session today? And when you've offered that, then the session is over. I get that question asked many times, and then the conversation goes on. When you've asked for completion, how does the client want to close? Then we're done. It's all finished. So I'm seeing things in the chat, but I don't know that any of those are questions. So Alessandra, I will pass that over to you if there's anything there before we listen to the last bit of this recording and then go to breakout. Okay. All right, so everybody, what we're going to do then is to listen to how this coach closed the session And let me just get that transcript up for those of you that the English translation will work. And let's just do the share again so that you've got this. And let's do this. And here we go.
Superpower. And that's sort of something that is going to give me, and everything that what being female stands for me is going to, it gives me an advantage that they don't have. So I don't need to downplay it. I don't need to change it. I don't need to be anything other than, and just, I want to revisit my leadership philosophy that I wrote, only to just sort of pull out some of those and add some of those things that I've realized.
So now we
when you
start.
kind of said that the focus was going to be on who you wanted to be and
That's who I
some
am.
clarity on that.
Mhm.
You wanted to walk away with some clarity on that. Anything else that we might need to look at to get you to that clarity?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I have that. I think I have my, yeah, I think I have that. I think I have it, and I know what I need. Then, in addition, then the next steps I need to take with my team.
So you've talked about the next step with your team. You've also talked about your leadership philosophy and
Yeah,
kind of massaging that
yeah.
as almost your guiding light, if you will.
Yeah.
Any other things you need to be doing to continue with this clarity of who you're going to be?
I don't think so, or nothing that comes to mind right now.
Okay. I know that when you say you're going to do something, you do it. So you have your own personal accountability. However, do you need any support at all to fulfill this?
Yeah, I mean, you would be awesome.
Well, of course you have that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. Like, maybe what I do is I read you my leadership philosophy, or my, whatever I want to call it. That doesn't feel right anymore. Like, I think I've evolved from that. So maybe it's my leadership guiding principles, whatever it is.
That sounds
And
good.
yeah, and so maybe I redefine those and, share it with you.
Okay.
Because that's just something to, when you know someone else's eyes are going to be on it, right? It makes it different.
Okay. That works. What's going to get in your way of doing this, if anything?
I don't think so. I think this is a needed. I think I'm depending on this. So I don't think anything's going to get in my way. If anything, I would say just reflection time. But I mean, you can always find that somewhere, someplace, right?
Yeah. It felt like to me, you had multiple ahas, light bulb
Yeah.
moments today, whatever. How are you going to celebrate this breakthrough you just went through?
Well, I think using the momentum and, maybe trying to get some time today or to kind of carry that forward, right? Carry the momentum. Yeah, and putting it into action, just conscious. I have a different awareness now.
All right, awesome. What else, if anything, do we need to talk about this to wrap it up for you?
No, I think that's fantastic. And I thank you. I felt, I think you can probably see it on my face, but I felt, I kind of heavy, like heavy for sure, buried, like, I don't know. It's a funny thing. Just those tweaks, right, that give you the clarity that have you reframe something and look at it from a different perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Well, you did all the work. And one of the things that stood out for me was that when I asked you how you felt when you said the word superpower, you were like motivated and clear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It sounded powerful.
Yeah. It's very powerful on International Women's Day. Think about that.
Oh yeah,
I just realized that.
Yes,
I
said that.
Okay. Excuse me.
And sorry, we didn't see your text, so can you share for a while so we can take an overview?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I wish you'd said something sooner.
Interrupt the registration because we are in the flow. But if you can share now, maybe we can take a quick look. Sorry.
Of course. I can't send the transcript. My apologies, everyone. I told you. Technology is not my strong suit. Here we go. So it started here, and it was just about 6 minutes where the coach offered exactly what we had talked about, was bringing things to a close. As I said to you, there was a lot of the partnership and the anchoring of this learning as the conversation went on, because that's exactly what happens at an MCC level, that it is not just something that is going to occur at the very, very end, but that it occurs all the way through, that the coach is in complete partnership with the client. So it's there. My apologies. Truly, I am sorry. And I can't send, I have permission to use, but I can't send this to everyone. So I wanted to be sure that you had at least something that you could refer to. Are there any thoughts or questions or observations that are showing up for anyone before we actually send you to the breakout rooms? Any questions that you might have? Excuse me. No, we're good. Okay, so what we're going to do is to send you into breakout rooms. And what I'm asking you to do is there are 2 questions. And of course, we'll give you about 15 minutes in the breakout room. So am I doing the breakout rooms, Giorgio, or are you going to do that from your end? I can't do it. I don't see that I have.
Faccio io.
Sorry, you'll do
Fai
it?
tu.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry. Okay, so he'll do that. So there are 2 questions that I'm asking you to pay attention to have a discussion around. What did you notice overall from the recording in relation to these bookends? What is standing out for you as perhaps new information or has been really highlighted as things that you want to pay attention to? Second piece is knowing that this is really what we're looking for from an assessing perspective. You know, if this is what you aspire to be demonstrating, what might be something that you want to pay attention to in your coaching development as you continue? And I guess third, anything that comes up for you as far as a question, anything that you would like to have answered before we leave today. Any questions about what you're being asked to do?
Maybe if you could be just so kind to put the questions in the chat also, so that we can remind if it's not a problem.
Of course. And so I can do that in English, but I don't know
Yeah,
that
no worries. It's okay in English.
Does that work?
Yes, please.
Of course. So let me do this. And everyone. So you'll be in breakout rooms for the next 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and I'd love to hear whatever comes up in your breakout rooms. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I'll see you back here soon. Are we bringing them back now?
Yeah,
The last
Good.
minute.
in
Oh,
30
here they
seconds or
come.
less.
Here they come.
Yes, they are coming back.
Here they come. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Oh, and I see some smiles. Franco, you're smiling. Why are you smiling? I'm happy to see you smiling. Why are you smiling?
I think it was a very productive conversation, honestly. So, and it's always a pleasure to meet new people and to do a fresh sharing, idea sharing.
And what made it such a productive conversation for you?
I think, and I noticed this also in other ICF workshops. I mean, people are quite, I think people feel safe also to express themselves and also to express their vulnerability. And maybe, and was one of them saying which were possibly my improvement areas during coaching conversation. So what we shared as a possible improvement area, and also learning from today's is that sometimes is conflicting the space you want to leave to the client or the coachee and the objective you have to reach at the end of the conversation. So we found very effective the last conversation we had, because it was really impressive how aside of the celebration, the coach was able just to find an effective objective on this. So I think it was quite effective, and honestly quite impressive, because not always it's easy to combine the listening competence and also the willing to find an objective.
Wonderful, thank you. And I really appreciate your comment about the fact that people come with the intent to learn and are willing to be open and vulnerable with colleagues. Coaching has a very different mindset within the community. We're here to support one another. It's not to tear anyone down. It's to be of support with one another. So that's important to pay attention to. Thank you, Franco. Who else? What would you like to put in the room? What did you experience? Here I go, stacking questions. Ay, ay, ay. What did you learn? What did you experience in that breakout room? Don't be shy.
Nella nostra breakout, Anna, è emerso questo, diciamo così, un'osservazione molto interessante da parte di uno dei partecipanti. Cioè, ad un certo punto è stato notato questo, che nella sessione c'è stata la celebrazione e poi a seguire, dopo la celebrazione, è stata riutilizzata la parola in un contesto di domanda dell'ostacolo, per cui la sensazione inizialmente, cioè, che abbiamo condiviso è stata, ma siamo tornati indietro, cioè abbiamo celebrato e poi abbiamo ripreso il concetto dell'ostacolo. Poi dopo ci siamo dati una sorta di risposta a flusso, nel senso che celebrazione dei progressi diciamo consapevolizzati insieme dal coach e insieme al coach, e a seguire rafforzamento di quello che dovrà essere poi la sua progressione, naturalmente proprio diciamo, in conseguenza della celebrazione. Può avere un senso tutto questo?
Yes. Yes, it makes sense. So here's what I would offer. As much as there were several competencies demonstrated well in this recording, there are pieces of this that if I were assessing, I would point out as developmental feedback for the coach. For example, exactly what you offered. Once we ask that closing, how it is that we're going to close the session, then there really shouldn't be much more after that. There were a couple of places in the agreement where the coach stepped over as the client was still speaking. So these are minor adjustments. However, at an MCC level, there's a level of artistry. We talk about the art and science of coaching. The science is the technique, is the technical things that is very common at the ACC, still at the PCC, hoping that there's more artistry coming in at PCC. At the MCC, it is total artistry. So it's for us to feel like this is a very fluid conversation. And there were some hiccups along the way. But remember, every time we have recordings, whether it be ACC, PCC, MCC, we're looking at those as beginner ACC, beginner PCC, beginner MCC. So when I listen to an MCC recording, it's someone who has 2,501 hours behind them, not 8,000 hours behind them. At a PCC recording, I'm listening to someone who has 501 hours behind them. So I need to pay attention as I'm assessing that. And so for this, as I said, she's a mentoring client. She was awarded her MCC, and we went through that recording. And when I was giving her feedback, there were certain things that I pointed out to say, this may get in the way of you getting your pass. I don't know. It'll depend on who's going to listen to it. So it's a great pickup on the part of your group that there was more behind that didn't need to be there. Yes, exactly. I hope that explanation helped. Good noticing. What else showed up for you in your group? And perhaps it's a question that you have.
Hi, Anne. I'm Gabriela.
Hello. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, indeed. In our group, basically, we noticed that at the very end, there was a question, a closed question, on do you have support on something? And basically, someone said that at the MCC level, it's also good to come up with closed question at the right timing. And I found this extraordinary because I was trying to always stay far away from those closed questions. I was personally, I'm quite how do you say? I'm quite nervous to see whether I'm using closed or open question. And tonight, I'm realizing that the more you advance into the levels, the less probably you have to take care about this, because it comes natural that I don't know if it makes sense to you, but I understood through my colleagues that if you are able to do the right closed question at an MCC level, it's a good thing to do. It's not bad.
That's actually a great piece of insight. Closed questions are not bad. They're not wrong. Closed questions are used for clarification and confirmation. The number of closed questions that you ask is what is most important to pay attention to. What's causing you to ask so many closed questions in a session? As I said at the beginning, the more closed questions that you offer, the greater the chance that you do not have a clear agreement. And when you're asking closed questions, you're doing more work. And we know that the client is the one who does the work, right? 3 rules of coaching. The client does the work, the client does the work, the client does the work. And so when you offer closed question, closed question, closed question, the client's not doing the work anymore. You're trying to solve a problem. So closed questions have a place and they can be used. So you could tell through the laughter and the banter back and forth that there's a nice relationship between this coach and the client. A closed question could be used as a challenge, especially when you have a really good relationship. For example, Gabriela, if we were in a coaching relationship and you had shared something with me, a closed question I could offer could be something like, do you really believe that? That's a closed question, but it's meant to challenge you. It's not meant to make you wrong. So that's the other part of that. How it's offered, my tone, that there's no judgment, that there's no criticism in it. It's just like we teach everyone, you don't use the question, why? Well, I have to tell you, sometimes the best question you can ask is why. What's why in Italian? Perché?
Perché?
Perché? Okay. I'm trying here. Perché? Here's the thing, how you offer it, your tone, your pacing, your intonation. So I could say, why? Or I could say, why? It has a very different way of landing with you. Closed questions are the same thing. Why are you asking a closed-ended question? And if there's a way for you to ask an open-ended question, then do so. But if you're looking for clarification, Or if you're looking for confirmation, a closed-ended question is fine. To your point, Gabriella, the more you move and the closer you move to an MCC, the less likely you'll hear a closed-ended question unless it's for one of those two purposes. Does that help?
A lot, yeah, thank you. No, that makes much more sense, yeah.
Good, good, good. So there was a closed-ended question. Does that help? Yes, no. But I'm looking for clarification. Make sure that you're understanding exactly. Excellent, excellent question. Anyone else? Anything that came up in your group that you either would like to share or a question that you have? These are brilliant. Thank you.
Sì, sono Sabrina. Nel nostro gruppo ci siamo
Hello.
Ciao. Nel nostro gruppo ci siamo soffermati con una domanda per la quale abbiamo un po' risposto, ma volevo sapere un po' la tua risposta. Se alla fine, dopo gli apprendimenti, la persona stessa, il coach, ci dice c'è ancora qualcos'altro che non mi è chiaro, se ci dice così, ma siamo appunto alla chiusura e chiediamo in che modo vuoi proseguire o capire meglio questo argomento che mi stai ponendo, visto che appunto siamo alla chiusura anche, ci dice ok, la prossima volta, mettiamo così. Va bene, finiamo la sessione, ci siamo chiesti la prossima volta noi coach dobbiamo presentargliela questo argomento o aspettiamo e lasciamo che sia il coach che ci pone l'argomento? Visto che era così importante, avevamo questo dubbio. Allora si diceva di no, però appunto volevo sentire la tua opinione, grazie.
Your group was right on, Sabrina. So what is really lovely about your question is that often near the end of a recording, I will hear a coach say, is there anything else that you want to talk about today before we close? And that's like opening the doors wide open and there's no time. So you're going to slam them shut because there's no time to go anywhere. That's why it's so important in how you language where you are in the session. You can do subtle time stamping. We've got about 8 minutes left. Curious where you are now in relation to where we started. What have you learned? All of those types of things. And then we move to, we're at the end of our session today. How would you like to close? What would you like to say? Not, is there anything else you want to talk about? If, however, a new topic shows up near the end of a session, as you beautifully described, the coach partners with the client to say something like, we're really at the end of our time together today. How would you like to address this topic? What would you like us to do with that? So I'm working in partnership with my client. The client then gets to say, don't worry about it. I don't really want to talk about it. Or the client might say, you know what, put that on the list. I think I want to talk about that the next time you and I get together. Partnership, what would you like me to do with that? Or how would you like me to bring that forward when you and I get together next time? I'm partnering with the client. So you are directing me. And therefore, if you say to me, Sabrina, that's the first thing I want to talk about next time, don't let me forget. I've now been told by my client what to do the next time. So the next time you and I meet, I would say to you, Sabrina, I just want to make sure, last time we were together, you said ABC. Is that still where you want to spend time? So it goes back to Gabriella's question of a closed question. Is that still how you want to proceed today? You get to say, nope, I've already taken care of that. Or yes, that's exactly where I want to be. So you get to decide. How's that landing for you, Sabrina? That was a great question.
Sì, sì, grazie mille. Grazie.
Of course, of course. I'm noticing that we're almost at time, Georgia, so I don't know how you want to close this out.
Sì, direi che andiamo verso la conclusione, se sei d'accordo.
Saranno disponibili le slide?
Allora, sarà disponibile la
Oh,
registrazione.
yes. Yes, and the final slide with my contact, yes, as soon as I can
Yeah.
find them for you. Yes, I will put them back up. And here
E
we go.
intanto io ricordo gli appuntamenti, così tanto che tu proietti la slide. Ok. Intanto prendo lo spunto per ringraziare Anne della disponibilità del suo intervento. Ringrazio Elena e Alessandra che hanno curato la sessione e ringrazio voi per aver partecipato. Vi ricordo gli ultimi due appuntamenti del 2024 del Team Formazione saranno il 19 novembre con la masterclass Supervisione e Coaching Azione con Claire Beckett e Mirella Treves. Il 10 dicembre, sempre alle 18, la masterclass Fulliness and Wisdom con Laura Cutica. E poi vi ricordo giovedì 7 alle 18 il workshop del progetto DEIBE, il coaching per promuovere diversità, equità, inclusione e appartenenza nelle organizzazioni con Rosy Cosco. E infine, questo è un evento post conferenza a Firenze il 23 novembre, coaching e intelligenza artificiale generativa, quale la nostra prossima sfida. I posti sono limitati, per cui per questo e per tutti gli altri eventi vi invito a dare un controllo sul sito di ICF Italia in modo da potervi organizzare al più presto. Non mi resta che ringraziarvi di nuovo, augurarvi un buon proseguimento e ci vediamo alla prossima. Grazie a tutti e tutte.
Grazie. Ciao.
Thank you,
Grazie.
thank you,
Ciao a
everyone.
tutti. Bye.
Grazie,
Good evening.
grazie.
Grazie.
Ciao, ciao a
Grazie a
tutti.
tutti.
Ciao.